This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
Think about what's best for the team as we go forward. You can't just do everything in a short-term window. And so we know that, there are some young players that are developing that ultimately they are not what they're going to be yet, but you have to make an educated decision on whether or not you feel like, through continued work and effort from the player and the coaches, that they're going to, that'll change for the better in certain ways, and ultimately impact the team. Obviously, some of that has to do with, the construction of the salary cap and, cost, et cetera. So, there's a lot of different things that go into it. Some are trying to figure out, how you can put together your best 69 or 70 players to work with, continuing to work with guys on the practice squad. So certain decisions, you try to do the best you can on those two. Nothing's ever a sure thing when you release a player and try to get him on the practice squad. But, that's basically what this next so many days is about, is trying to figure out how do we put the best group of guys together that we can continue to work with through the course of the season, develop, understanding that a number of those guys that start in the practice squad will eventually play for us, as they did last year. We saw a number of guys like that in that role eventually contribute in multiple ways on our team last year. So a lot that goes into it. It's not a simple thing.
It's always a tough day on cut down day. There's feelings and all that kind of stuff involved. But this year in particular, as you're kind of, I'm sure, you're formulating thoughts on that and everything, but it feels like there's going to be some difficult cuts this year with some good players that might not be able to make the 53-man roster. Do you kind of get that feeling that this is going to be one of the more difficult ones?
I think it's always difficult. I don't know. There's a human side of that, regardless of who you release, they've done a lot of work. They put a lot of effort, time, energy into competing and trying to do the best thing for the team and trying to improve themselves. So there's a tremendous amount of respect that's involved with all of our players, regardless of whether they make the roster, we put them on the practice squad, or ultimately they go somewhere else. You have a tremendous feeling for those guys because of all that they've done to try to help you and your team be better. So I don't really think it would be unfair for me to sit here and say this year's decisions will be harder than last year's, because I kind of look at them all. They're all not fun to go through at the end of the day, because, like I said, there's a human element to it. The goal for us will be always to try to make every one of them difficult, because we've added competition, in every room at every spot. And so I hope we want to keep, 80 guys, you know what I mean? And not, there's 47 that we like and we're trying to figure out who the other 6 are. I don't think we're going to be in that boat. I think there's going to be a number of players we would love to keep. As I mentioned, that's kind of where it goes into the 53 plus, 16, 17 extra guys, where you're saying, how can we construct this thing so where we have the best group of players going forward?
How much does it change with the third quarterback?
It just depends whether you feel like that's a necessity in a specific week or a game. Again, if you carry a third quarterback on the roster, then you have the ability to do that, obviously. It doesn't really affect you if you don't have one on the roster. So, some teams will choose to do it, some teams won't. We've chosen to do both things in the past, where I've been, and last year, so, we'll see how it kind of unfolds. But I think each team will make it their own decision. The rule, the reason, I think one of the reasons why the rule was put into play, obviously, is a very unique situation, uncommon. We all know that. So I don't know that everybody will overreact to it and then carry 3 guys just because of what happened last year.
Just real quick on that, because I think you have to designate who that number 2 is. Mm-hmm. But I would feel as a coach that you might, if you have 3 quarterbacks and you have 2 that are on the sidelines, it might be a gut feeling, like in that particular game, what the best option might be. Like you might have a young guy who you're building for the future, but also maybe a veteran, like in your case, where geez, in the middle of a game, that might be the best option to go to.
There's no question that you have to figure out exactly how you feel based on the week and or the situation. It wasn't the same rules, but a long time ago, we had Flutie and Castle. And Doug was a veteran player, obviously, and Matt was a young player, and so you're making choices based on how you would feel about what happens in the third quarter versus if we had an entire week to practice, et cetera. So you have to make decisions based on the information you have, and it might change. It could change from 1 week to the next or 1 month to the next based on what we do at practice. Because, again, we've said before, like, the competition won't stop for us. We'll continue to work and practice, and everybody will get repetitions during the season also for that reason.
So sorry for biting on the pause.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
But, I want to ask you about your first and your second round pick. Obviously, you haven't seen a whole lot from Tyree, but he's back on the field. What have you seen from him that you like? And also, Michael Mayer, describe the progress you feel like he's made from rookie OTAs to where he's at now.
Yeah. Tyree's doing well. Excited to kind of, continue to move forward here. We got, a handful of individual reps last week, got a couple one-on-ones, as you guys saw. And then yesterday we were able to kind of move forward into some team stuff, and now we'll be pads, and so it's kind of progressing the way we wanted it to, and we'll keep being smart and diligent, following the direction of the medical people there. But he's doing great. Excited to continue that process with him, and Michael's just learning every day. Sponge, works really hard. You guys got to talk to him yesterday. I mean, great attitude. Really, really a quick study in terms of some of the things that you need to be able to do well. Tight end's a tough position to play, right off the bat, and do everything the way that it needs to get done at a winning level, because you have to run block, pass protect, run routes, get open, difference between man and zone. Different coverage, read the safety. There's a lot of things that go into that. So he's hard at work at it, making progress every day.
What does it say about him, about Michael Mayer? They responded after that first rough day in pads. He's come along since then.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really be physically tough unless you're mentally tough. So he had an experience that was, some would call it fun, some would call it educational, some would call it not so good. But that's part of the NFL. You go through it. Sometimes I'd rather it happen in a practice than a game. You know what I mean? So, I thought his response that day was really good. You know what I mean? Didn't let it get him down. Didn't, walk around with his head down. You know what I mean? So we're all going to get, the short end of the stick every once in a while in this league. There's really good players on both sides of the ball on every play. So you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But he's very resilient, tough, and has had a great attitude since he's been here.
You mentioned at Notre Dame, I'm sure this is pretty typical for college, is that the plays were 1 or 2 words. And I know that at college there's a time limit on how much you have to work with players at that level. So I'm sure that plays into it. But are you cognizant of that? Understanding what that learning curve might be, not just for him but for everybody.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that don't even have words because there's somebody on the sideline that are showing them, signals or poster boards or pictures or whatever it is. So we've been battling that for years now. Just relative to the National Football League being more about huddling and, play calls, et cetera. I think there's a demand for that in our league relative to the, look, I'm all for being simple, but, if you're too simple, you're going to get your butt kicked. You know what I mean? So there needs to be an element of sophistication involved with the game to some degree. I'm not saying overdo it, but to some degree. So we've dealt with that. I remember when we drafted Jimmy, I think that was his first huddle, and in many cases, sometimes their first snap from center. So, this has been upwards of 10 years plus, relative to college football kind of heading in a different direction. So we've had to navigate that, I'd say, with every rookie class we've had on both sides of the ball. Because sometimes like I said, there's no huddling.
Update on Chandler Jones?
No, again, we have I'd say a handful of guys that are getting closer. I think he's in that bucket. So working through, just trying to get right. And again, we had to stretch a number of days in pads that we were allowed to be in pads. So there's probably 6, 8, 10 guys here that are continuing to work through it. So hopefully we're getting closer.
When you look at the process of building the team and you see veterans and the young guys, is there kind of a balance that you look for, or is it just kind of a feeling out type process?
You're talking about at the end of
when it's all said and done,
yeah.
Build that team. You have a pretty good blend right now of veterans and young guys.
Yeah, I think there's probably that in every room, competition-wise. I think you have to consider all those factors. It's not easy. Dave and Champ, I know, are going to talk to you guys tomorrow, and there's a lot that, people, you can always kind of go through a bunch of different scenarios, and there's certain things that, based on how long you have the player under contract versus somebody else who might not be, if it's like this, then it's an easy decision. If it's close, it's harder, so always trying to look, like I said, past just tomorrow and this next few months into this season and beyond, because if you're going to do the right thing for the organization, it can't just be a short-term view. So not easy decisions, but all of those things will factor into it.
Last year, you were trying to teach the standard. And this year, I asked Luke Masterson yesterday about Epps, Peters, and Spillane, and he said they set the standard. With all that you tried to do, how much better is it that now Dave's brought in free agents that know the standard and the team is setting it, you don't have to?
Yeah, I think ultimately we've said from the beginning it's theirs. We can only describe what we're looking for and what we want and try to hold them accountable to a standard of performance each day. At the end of the day, whatever we end up doing ultimately will be what they want the standard to be. Whether, the way we work each week, how we play, how resilient we are when we're behind, how ready to close the game out in the second half when we're ahead. How do you bounce back from a defeat? How do you handle victory and success? All of those things, there's a standard that will apply. And so at the end of the day, I can stand up there and talk all I want to. The players ultimately, they want to win. And so it's their standard when they get to the field, and they know that. And we're responsible to put them in great positions and help them win. But I think our leadership has been fantastic. And some of the guys you mentioned, along with a number of other guys that have been here, Colton Miller and Max Crosby, A.J. Cole, Daniel Carlson. We got a number of guys that have been really assertive in terms of, helping their rooms or their side of the ball really understand what they're looking for.
Coach, Gary went on IR yesterday. Was that from the game on Saturday? And then I guess how frustrating for somebody who's building it the way he was to lose that.
Yeah, it was. It's just for those guys, they work their butt off, and Darren was an undrafted guy, and kind of made his way into the games last year in a number of phases, and off season, kind of worked through the off season to get better, and then had a decent training camp going, and then it's just unfortunate. We're lucky we haven't had more of them so far, but hurts for DB that he put a lot of work into this year and was hoping for some good results here, and but if I know him, he'll attack the rehab process the right way and get back after it, and hopefully be ready to go next spring.
What was his injury? He's out in college.
He's out. I know. It's a season ender.
Couple more. Paul and Vic.
Did not have Doug Flutie on my bingo card for today. As
You
far as
didn't?
reference today.
Yeah.
But what's the latest with Josh Jacobs right now? And then also, as far as Jimmy goes, I don't know if we're going to talk to you again before the Dallas game, but do you still need to see him in game action, or is he good to go?
I have no update on JJ. Nothing's changed there. So, I don't know that we are going to put some guys out there again. Like I said, the 4 joint practices really were huge for us. Because there was a huge chunk of work that those guys got in those practices. It was really revealing to us, a lot of things, good and bad, and we've been able to gauge a lot off of that, and limit the, let's call it, risk to some degree, and we wanted to get out there last week and make sure we got out there and kind of played and looked each other in the eye in the huddle, and I thought that was all done the right way with those guys. They approached it the right way, but we'll sit down tonight and finalize that. But I think there's going to be some guys that won't suit up, or won't play. They'll suit up, but they won't play. And again, we have plenty of things to work through, on the roster at a lot of positions. So it's going to be an important day for us. But the ultimate decisions on who's going to finally play and all that, we're going to get to here shortly.
I had a kind of a minutia question, like in today's practice.
A what?
A minutia? Like a
minutia question.
I'm waiting my question now. But
prefacing your question.
Today's practice, will a group like the D-line have like daily goals? And what goes into the evaluation of their practice on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it might not be like on a printed out sheet, but each position coach, in the morning, we have a squad meeting, kind of describe what we're going to do. What are we going to try to accomplish for the day? And then each coordinator has an opportunity to address the units that are under their control, and kind of big picture what they're looking for, from their side of the ball. So I'm kind of like above that, and they're kind of zoning in. Then when the position coaches get their opportunity to meet with their groups, they're very specific on what they're looking for. And so whether that be a technique or a fundamental that we need to address and improve quickly, or some type of a situation that maybe that group didn't necessarily handle as well the last time we did it, goal line, low red zone, third down, whatever it is, 2 minute, the position coach always has some real critical things that he wants to leave his group with, and then usually practice. I hope I'm giving you enough minutia. Practice will reflect that. So when we go to our individual drills, those individual drills should reflect what the coach talked about in the morning. Then the group drills should reflect what the coordinator talked about in the morning. And then ultimately the team drills will reflect what I talked about in the morning. So, there's your circle of life.
Nice, Coach. Nice.
Yeah, you got it, guys. Thank you.
No minutia too small.
You've been watching Breaking News from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.